We're at day 11 of the trial now, and we want to catch you up on the case with the most important parts of the testimony so far. You're going to remember that Troconis, of course, is one of two people facing charges in connection with the disappearance and death of New Canaan mother Jennifer Farber-Dulos, mother of 5. And many of you have been watching the case gavel to gavel play out from the courtroom. I'm Kara Sundlun, chief digital anchor here, and joining me right now is criminal defense attorney Walter Hussey, who is known for his work on cases like this, but just want to say he is not working on the Troconis case at all. Of course, that's why you're allowed to be here. So Walter, thank you so much for being here to help us understand what we've seen and where this case is going.
Nice to be here.
Yeah. So just to get familiar with the case, you're going to remember that Jennifer vanished back in 2019. Of course, this was in the middle of a contentious divorce. We heard that she was afraid of her estranged husband. Michelle Troconis was dating Farber-Dulos, who was the estranged husband. And then you can see Kent Mawhinney over there on the right. Farber-Dulos died after attempting suicide back in January 2020. And then that friend of Fotis, Kent Mawhinney, who's also charged in this case with conspiracy to commit murder. But some interesting thoughts about him from Walter Hussey. We'll get to that. His case has not gone to trial yet. So we're going to go over the most important parts of the trial that we've seen this week. And let's go back to the bloody clothing, the bloody bra, the bloody vineyard vine shirt, both of them cut open. That was when we heard a response from Jennifer Farber-Dulos' family that they wanted to, as hard as that was to watch, they were happy that the world would know she's not missing, that she died a horrible, tragic death.
True, and I think that's basically what the state has accomplished up to this point in time, right? With the conspiracy to commit a murder, we've talked about this a lot, but one of the elements that has to be proven beyond a reasonable doubt is, in fact, that Jennifer was murdered. In this case, the state's theory is murdered by Farber-Dulos, and all the evidence that we've seen almost up to this point was geared towards establishing, proving beyond a reasonable doubt that Fotis was, in fact, guilty of killing Jennifer, and she didn't disappear. And I think, a lot of people found that to be offensive when that was put out there, that somehow she staged her disappearance. Well, obviously that's not the case at all.
Right. And, I'm holding in my hand, this is just the arrest warrant that I've actually been going over with you, with your legal mind of, me just reading it and you noticing things. But, this has everything in here of, the DNA evidence. They found so much DNA evidence with Farber-Dulos' DNA, with Jennifer Farber-Dulos' DNA, on the car, on the garage. I mean, clearly, but what you're saying is just before we could even get to whether or not Michelle tried to cover this up, you had to establish that Jennifer was murdered.
Yes, 100%. And that's exactly what they've done. And it's a great way to start a case, if you think about it, for a lot of different reasons. Because I'm sure if they had their way, they'd much rather try Fotis than Troconis, right? There's no doubt about it. Since he took his life and opted out, they still, I think in a lot of ways, they needed to close it up, right? For no other reason for the family. But think about all the time and effort that all the agencies, all the police departments, the state police, everyone, the lab, put into this. And they want to see their work bear some fruit.
They want to show everyone in the world what exactly happened, since there was that theory that Fotis was putting out when he was alive. His defense attorney, Norm Pattis, is she like a gone girl? And that's the other thing. We had a lot of jury problems last week. We haven't seen that this week. So the jury, we had a juror who was talking about Gone Girl. That juror was dismissed. We haven't heard about jury problems this week, so it seems that they're listening to the judge's orders that you cannot talk about this case.
Hopefully, yeah. I mean, it's a simple message, but human nature prevails sometimes. But hopefully the people that are still on the jury have gotten the message and they're not watching our show. And we'll just stick to the evidence that's presented in the courtroom. Because
they're not, just to be clear, they're not allowed to watch TV about this case or read about it. They're not supposed to anyway.
Absolutely not.
Okay, so the next compelling part that I think everyone was watching was the video of Farber-Dulos and Michelle Troconis in that truck on Albany Avenue in the north end of Hartford, where he's throwing away bags that prosecutors allege are the bloody clothes and the bloody evidence. And he's just out there throwing them in different garbage cans. And then we see her also get out of the car for a second. Maybe she was dropping something, maybe she was picking up something. But let's just start with that video of how many times we see him dumping bags. How important is that?
Oh, very. Well, to get to that point, what happened was when he went to the police department, I think the first time he had his cell phone, and the police officers, the detectives, I believe, down in New Canaan, confiscated the phone. They got a search warrant for that phone, approved by a judge, and in it they found out that there was a phone call, or at least a ping, coming off somewhere in the vicinity of Albany Avenue, right in the north end of Hartford, about 7:25 on the night that Jennifer went missing. So what they were able to do, there's something called C4. We've talked about this before, but it's really amazing. They have cameras throughout the city of Hartford. And so the police department, it's a giant screen. It's really impressive. So if you tell them such and such address, such and such time, they can look, and then there it is. They found the raptor, and they're able to watch the movements of the raptor as it goes from place to place as Doulos, as you said, is throwing away trash. In terms of Troconis, I can't tell what she did. I mean, the door opened. I don't know if she threw anything out. I don't know if she dropped something. It's unclear to me, but if you watch the videos in its entirety, you will see Fotis Doulos doing all the action as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, so that's going to be something the state's going to really have to clear up. We're going to pause for a moment here because Matt McFarland is just out of court. Right now, court just wrapped up about 5 minutes ago for the lunch break for this final day of testimony this week. I want to go live out to the courthouse with Matt McFarland so he can update us. Matt, what's been happening this morning? Can you update us on what you've learned so far on this case today?
So this morning, Kara, it's going to focus on the second police interview Michelle Troconis did with a number of state police detectives. This was back on June 6th, 2019. This took place 4 days after her initial interview with state police detectives. Now, this took place in the office of her then attorney, Andrew Bowman's law offices in Westport. Basically, right off the bat, detectives telling Michelle Troconis that this was her final chance to come clean, to set the record straight, to tell the truth, to let them know what happened to Jennifer Farber Doulos. They believed that she had some sort of information. They wanted to know where Fotis Doulos, her then boyfriend, was during the morning on May 24th, the day Jennifer went missing. They also wanted to know about what happened later that evening as well. One thing to point out that they said they've had more information from the first chance they got to speak with her. They had that video that you and Walter were just talking about, that C4 video that showed Fotis Doulos making a number of stops in Hartford's North End. They said they also had those pieces of paper now, the sort of the timeline referred to before the case started. Prosecutors describing them as alibi scripts. They said that they had those as well. They said at one point, you know, there are some major problems with the story that you're telling us. Again, they felt that she had some information, wasn't being truthful. At one point, they said, listen, you know, you have to realize this relationship with Fotis is over. He's manipulative. He's controlling. The only person that he really cares about is himself. You could see Michelle Troconis break down during this interview as well. At one point, they asked her, where do you think Jennifer is? She sort of started to go that, you know, I think maybe she sort of left, is missing. But she said, you told me there's blood. They said, you're a mother yourself. Would you leave your own child not telling her where you were going? So, again, this is a lengthy interview. Prosecutor said it's going to go about 3 hours, 30 minutes. Judge Kevin Randolph telling jurors that they'll come back at 2:15. They'll watch video for the next hour. If they'll take another break then, if there's more video, they'll continue to watch it after that. But they are stopping it every now and then to hear from now retired State Police Detective John Kimball, who was in that interview as well. In addition to the state police detectives who took part in that interview, then Stamford State's Attorney Richard Colangelo, he also pops into the room a little bit into the interview process as well, talking to her again, telling her, you know, we think you have some information. We feel you haven't been truthful with us, saying that your statements have changed between the initial interview and now, and continually saying, you know, we're trying to find out just what happened to Jennifer.
Yeah, Matt, I know you only have limited time with us, but before you go, I just want to ask you, yesterday we saw Michelle Troconis cry when they showed that video. Today, they're playing the parts where they say, we don't think you're being truthful. Any emotion coming from her today?
We're in the media overflow room today, so we're not getting the full shot of her seeing it. But during the actual video, she breaks down a number of times when they're telling her what they believe happened to Jennifer and telling her specifically what they think Fotis did to her as well.
Okay. Matt McFarland covering the case gavel to gavel for us. I know you're going to have much more coming up on Eyewitness News starting at 4, and we'll continue to hear what happens as this case plays out. Thanks for being with us, Matt. So, Walter, I know you couldn't hear what Matt was saying, but to our audience, what everyone just heard is this is day 2, and they're playing more tapes, and they're getting to the part where they're saying, we don't think you're being truthful with us, and that he only cares about himself. Like, you need to come say something to us. And that she does break down in the video multiple times, kind of crying, like, well, I don't know, I think she's, where's Jennifer? Oh, she's missing, but you're saying there's blood. As you watch these videos, because this case ultimately is about Michelle Troconis, what would the state be trying to show here? The inconsistencies in her story, but if you're a defense attorney, then you're saying this isn't that abnormal, that she's breaking under pressure?
Yeah, well, there's 2 ways to break down that question. Number one, if you're the state, you want to establish, look, if this person was truly credible and honest, you would go into the interview and say exactly what you know. You wouldn't try to cover for someone. So it's clear, from the outset, she was covering for him, right? Basically at his direction. And I think you really have to put it in context, right? I think the first interview, if I'm not mistaken, was June, I think it was 2nd. There was another one June 3rd, and I believe a third on June 6th. And ultimately, she comes back in August of that year. I think it was August 9th. But in the first couple interviews, she wasn't being candid. She's going home to Fotis. Fotis hasn't been charged. Fotis isn't helping whatsoever. He's got to be a suspect, right? Because typically, despite the fact he has this contentious divorce with Jennifer, she's still the mother of his kids. And if he didn't kill her, you would think that he would try to help, right?
And he's not helping. That's important to say. Like, when you're setting the stage here, like, he's not helping. And
not
technically, in these videos, she didn't have to do this. She went in and spoke to them, but she wasn't, she's, on some level, is she cooperating even though they're not forcing her?
Well, yeah, so she hasn't been charged with a crime. And she goes in there with an attorney. And there's a lot of elements to look at here, right? Last night I heard her attorney, John Schoenhorn, say, well, she was subjected to 6 hours of interrogation by detectives in her second language, right? She's from Venezuela, right? So Spanish is her first language, English is her second. I don't know how proficient she is, but I would tell you, I could speak a little Spanish, un poquito, but if I went to Venezuela and I was under that type of situation for 6 hours and it was in Spanish, I wouldn't feel comfortable. So there was no interpreter, although she did have a lawyer, a different lawyer. That's a tough spot to be in. So I don't know if that's answering your question.
Well, from a defense perspective, right, from the states, you're saying, hey, he's not honest. And in fact, it says right here, I've got the warrant in front of me, that Troconis told detectives that after returning from dropping her daughter for school, she'd gone into the 4-group office, she'd seen Mawhinney, all of this. Okay, so under repeated questioning from detectives, she was unwilling to say that Doulos was not at the residence. She would only say that she did not see him during the morning. Not in the bedroom, not in the kitchen, not in the 4-group office.
Right.
But, originally she says they were in the shower together. And then they go, well, your alarm went off at 6:40. Was he in the bed? Was it? So eventually she goes from, we were showering together to, okay, I never saw him.
Well, that's right. But there's 2 ways to look at that, too. So she was covering for him, clearly. And then ultimately she says, you know what, I didn't see him. And ultimately she admits he probably wasn't there. She kind of conceded, like, it's a big house. He could have been there, I'm not sure. And then basically, no, he wasn't there, and he came back, I think, at 12:25. So does she lie completely? No, it's not like she held on to that. It's I hate to say it, but it's like dealing sometimes with kids when you're trying to find out what happened. Typically, they're not going to be honest, but ultimately you get to where you want to be, and they'll tell you what happened. In some ways, that's what happened here. So when you say, was she dishonest? Yes, but was she honest to the best of her ability? In the end, she suggests yes, and that's open for debate because...
That's what the jurors are going to have to decide. Where's her character?
Yeah,
because it's a he said, she said.
But it's even more than that, Kara. If you think about it, like, if she really knew things, wouldn't she have said, right? And that's one school of thought. You'd say, well, if she knew, she would have told. So obviously she didn't know anything. Why wouldn't she tell? I mean, that's a big question that I have in my mind. I would, if I was her lawyer, and said, look, it's pretty obvious to me that Doulos he's over his neck with a problem here, and if you can help the police, help yourself, then do so. Why wouldn't she?
Well, and they brought up in the interrogation that you're a mother. Would you ever leave your child like that? So also. Just the fact that she is a mother, we know that she's asked at different times to have her GPS monitoring system allow her to go somewhere where she could see her daughter do something, compete in an event or do something. She wanted to be there as a mother. So one of your arguments as a defense attorney would be that she has, why would she cooperate with this murder, or why would she do this? Because she has a lot to lose. She's a mom. She's the girlfriend. Did he really tell the girlfriend that he killed his wife?
Well, that's $1 million question too. I doubt it. I mean, think about it. So to me, yes, he committed the murder, but does he come back and tell her that? And she has a child? I mean, she could be next. Who knows?
And then the devil's advocate would be, okay, they've got these scripts that were previously called alibi scripts. They're not allowed to. They ruled this week you cannot call them alibi scripts. The prosecutor agreed with that. You also said that wouldn't be fair, but they've got these notes. They're comparing. Everything's got to be exactly right. She's in the truck and he's going. Doesn't she wonder like why he's dumping all this stuff everywhere? And there is on this warrant, there's one little part, the top of the bag, where it says that they, and we haven't gotten to this in the case yet, but the warrant says they did find Michelle Troconis' DNA, Fotis Doulos' DNA, and Jennifer Farber-Doulos' DNA, all three of them in one spot on the top of one of those bags that presumably might have had some bloody clothing.
Well, that's true. I mean, she could have touched it, but it was also, I believe, there was some tape. So it's unclear to me. Was it the tape? Was it the bag? Could have she innocently touched it? Where in the video do you see her grabbing a bag, throwing it away? I didn't see it. I don't know if it exists, but I would be pretty sure if it did exist, the state would show it. We haven't seen it.
And ultimately, we haven't gotten to this part yet, but there's this planted phone call where he has his friend from Greece call at a certain time, and she answers it. And you think that's going to be significant down the road? Well,
there's a little more to it, right? So they had to, the night before, this is planned out, certainly by Fotis. I don't know what Mawhinney's involvement is. We're going to find out later. I don't know what Troconis' her involvement is, but we're starting to find out. But one of the things was Doulos wanted to leave his phone in the residence as if he was there, right? And he wanted his friend from Greece to call, and I believe the duration of the call was 18 seconds. In the arrest warrant, Michelle says that Mawhinney directed her to answer the phone, all right, to prove if anyone was looking, see the phone was here, I took a phone call from Greece. She admits to all this. So
she admits she took the call and it wasn't him, where maybe police would see, oh, he was home, it was pinged right there and someone called and the Greek.
Well,
so
that's
if
the
it was
idea.
Premeditation to set up someone who would be an alibi, okay.
Right, and so Mawhinney's involved in that, right? And she's involved in that. So she, that doesn't look great for her, but she admits to it.
So if you're, as we break down the case here, if you've seen a lot of evidence here, but if you're the next level is they have to attach some actual guilt. They have to attach some doing, right, to get conspiracy or tampering with evidence. If she just touches a bag, even if she did throw it out, if she didn't know what was in it, you're saying that wouldn't be tampering. So they have to attach some connection of Michelle Troconis to this criminal activity. Have you seen that yet?
No. And so it's important to note, right, with the conspiracy, what the judge will tell this jury at some point in time, the way the case ends after all the evidence comes in, the judge instructs the jury as to what the law is, and what this judge most likely is going to tell the jury is mere presence alone or acquiescence isn't sufficient to establish anyone's guilt in a conspiracy. So sitting in that Raptor, that's not guilt beyond a reasonable doubt by any means. There's got to be more. There has to be more. The state has to have more. They have to establish more. I imagine they have more. We haven't seen it yet, though.
So let's talk about Kent Mawhinney. He's not been a witness yet. I know in the beginning, when we started doing this and analyzing trial, you said that at the end of the day, there's going to be a couple of witnesses that make or break the trial. Everyone wants to know what Kent Mawhinney's going to say, but why? What can you surmise about his dealings with authorities right now and maybe his importance in this case overall?
All right, so let's just back up, right? So he's in the same position really as Michelle, as the case was progressing. He goes to jail. He's unable to actually makes bond initially. Somehow he violated the conditions of his bond. He was placed back in prison. He was there for about 7 or 8 months, and then he had a conversation with the authorities, right? And he gave them a statement. I don't know what was said because I'm not privy to it, but whatever was said bought his freedom. So you have to surmise, right, that he said something about exactly what went down between the three of them, which would implicate Michelle.
And now if we go back, he's the one earlier accused that he had keys to a gun club and maybe dug a shallow grave, and there were some reports from his wife that he was violent, that maybe the two of them were planning to do something to their wives. So you think he's going to be ultimately really important. But the question is, what is he going to say about what Michelle knew?
Well, let's just say that he's going to somehow implicate her, right? You have to anticipate that's going to happen. And Attorney Schoenhorn knows what he said, because whatever he said, it was redacted to a statement that's provided to the defense. You and I haven't seen that, but
her defense attorney knows.
Yeah, so he's going to be ready, right? But beyond what he says, it really doesn't matter. You can, when you're assessing someone's credibility, certainly a person like this, a person that's in jail, you can you can use the tools, right? Say, well, okay, so you only said this because you want your freedom and you got your freedom. So in many ways, he's got problems, like you said. I would call it baggage. I mean, how do you explain the shallow grave, as you mentioned, at his gun club, at his behest, that apparently he was there because they were able to ping his phone? That doesn't look good for him. So sometimes you make a deal with the devil, and it comes back to haunt you. So the state might have basically chosen the wrong horse to try to back, but maybe out of desperation, he was the only person that was available. So it cuts both ways. So he could say something that's going to implicate her, and it could be powerful. It depends how he testifies. But at the same time, he has baggage, and it's up to the jurors to say, okay, despite this baggage, am I going to believe what he has to say beyond a reasonable doubt?
Okay. So if you're her defense attorney right now, it's Friday, and court's going to close soon, you're going to go into the weekend, how are you going to feel about this week going into the weekend if you're her defense attorney?
Tired.
Yeah.
No, seriously, she's in a good place. They're both in a good place right now because, I mean, the worst thing that you've seen is this, you know, the so-called tapes of talking to the police. But I think you can rationalize what's going on in there, and ultimately she's trying to tell the truth, and she gets to that. And in fact, there's parts where the investigators or the detectives say, for the most part, you're telling us the truth, but I got a problem with X, Y, and Z, and she kind of cleans that up. So for the most part, you're looking pretty good. Keep in mind, the standard is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. I haven't seen that yet. Okay.
So if you're the jury, if you're wondering how the jury's going to feel about this, the decision ultimately is a lot about character. Like, am I okay with the fact that she lied for a while before she came clean?
Well, it's the nature of the beast, right? When you're in these types of cases, oftentimes people do exactly what she did. It's not uncommon, and I think you can get around that. To me, that's not game over.
Okay. All right. We're talking about 6 weeks of testimony is what they originally said. We know there's a ton of witnesses, but you're seeing this go rather speedily, you think, as far as laying out how Jennifer Farberdoulos would have been murdered?
Yeah, I think it went a lot more quickly than we were anticipating. Pretty much they got that out. It seems like they're going to be done with that aspect of the case, the fact that she was murdered. I thought that might have taken longer. So the fact that that went so quickly, I think the rest of the case might go more quickly.
Now, the other testimony that we heard that was pretty compelling was the nanny. But again, was there anything that the nanny said other than really making us understand that Jennifer Farberdoulos was likely murdered? Anything that you saw problematic as far as what the nanny said that would have implicated Michelle in anything? Well,
and if you really think about it, the stuff that was found in the bags, right? So did she have anything to do with that? The missing stuff, right? The paper towels, I think there was 10 that were unaccounted for, and there was only 2 left, right?
Right.
The nanny basically brought Jennifer alive, right? So you got to feel that the nanny was powerful, and she was able to bring Jennifer's presence to the jury. And I think that's helpful, impactful emotionally, and it's going to hurt Michelle, clearly. But keep in mind, this is in the early part of a case, so as a case develops, sometimes your memory is not as strong as the first impression. Well, that was really powerful, time will go on. And then the bottom line is they still got to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that somehow she was involved.
What about the fact that we're learning they were having a really awful divorce, that Fotis is not seeming to be the best guy to Jennifer Farberdoulos and the nanny both said they were kind of afraid of him, and that this woman is dating him, having an affair with him, with a married woman? Does that hurt her?
You're asking me personally? I don't think so, because I think I mentioned this to you before. Including myself and most people I know, we've all at some point in our life had a bad relationship with someone, that you're with the wrong person for the wrong reasons. Maybe people would have said that about me or you, I don't know. But that happens, that's human nature. I think with the affair, I don't know when this whole arrangement started, but it seemed like the divorce and the separation was well on its way when Michelle came into his life. I'm not exactly sure on the timing, but I don't think that's really,
unclear.
I don't think that's really going to bother anyone. I mean, people get divorced all the time. People have affairs all the time. Does that mean she's responsible for a murder, or at least she had a hand in it? I wouldn't say so.
So obviously we don't know until we see it, but what do you think's coming next? Obviously the state has done its first part of laying out how this happened, why Jennifer Farberdoulos has not disappeared, she's not murdered. Now we're going to go, presumably they're going to have to go and explain their theory of how they really came up with these charges against Michelle. So we're going to see more connection, I would think. And they're in the warrant we see she's placed at the house, and Fotis Doulos has asked her to clean a lot of things. She's got paper towels and she's cleaning up this residence. Talk about what might be coming down the pike.
Okay, at least from the warrant. What they say in the warrant is when photos got back to Farmington, to where they lived, right? They went to another property that the Ford Group, that was his company at the time, owned, and I believe it was 11,000 square feet, so it's a huge home, right? So Michelle said ostensibly she went over there to clean windows, all right? To me, I don't know, is she the type of person that's gonna clean windows? Maybe, maybe not, but there's a lot of windows in that house, but I think she could safely say, the house being so big, she had no idea what Fotis was up to, which, you know, I give her the benefit of the doubt, that could be true. But Fotis, obviously, in that house, was trying to get rid of the evidence, and he was putting it in the trash bags, because from that house, the Raptor goes down to the north end of Hartford, and he's throwing away the trash bags. So basically everything happened in that home, I would think. At least you could surmise that, right?
Yeah. Well, and the million-dollar question, of course, is what happened to the body of Jennifer Farber-Dulos? And at this point, not from reading the warrant, not from hearing anything, do we know? And do you think that's going to be something the state is going to have to present or ask her again?
Well, it depends. Is she going to take the stand? That's a whole nother question. No, I don't think that's ever been answered, and certainly from what I can tell from what she's had to say up to this point, she doesn't know, so she can't answer that question. I don't think Kent Mawhinney can answer that question, because I think we would have found that out by now.
You think both of them, if they knew, would have said?
Well, I think so, sure, and I think the person that did know took it to his grave.
All right. Walter Hussey, thank you so much for being here. And as we continue to go through this, I just want to let everyone know that we're always streaming the TROCONIS trial on WFSB+. This is a lot to go through, so I guess the next part is going to be the cell phone evidence, the probably, we've got 6 hours of testimony to get through, and maybe we've been through half of it. This is a lot like a football game. It's going to be, and I know you actually used to run a football league in West Hartford, so this is going to be start, go over. Do you think we're going to see the tapes for the next week or so? It's going to take a while to get through all this?
Yeah, it's going to take a while, so we're probably approaching halftime, to use your analogy.
Okay.
So stay tuned for the second half.
All right. Walter Hussey, thank you so much for being with us. And for all of you streaming at home on WFSB+, you can always watch on Roku, Apple TV, Fire TV, Android TV. Of course, we'll have much more coming up. Court's supposed to be back in session in a little while, about 2:15. So starting on Eyewitness News at 4, we'll have more live reports from the courthouse, and we'll continue to bring you live legal analysis as well right here on Channel 3.